Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dr. Liz Wangare Geshimo, a clinical psychologist based in Kenya. Thank you so much for tuning in to this channel, Mugikuyu by Ancestry, Understanding Mental Health. Today, I chose to talk about a topic of one of the main things that we see in therapy. When someone comes to therapy, it's usually because of either three main things. They're in crisis. The therapy has been mandated because if it's not done, something in their life will go wrong. And the other reason is that someone has tried all other avenues of trying to resolve their own personal issues, and therapy is sort of like a last resort so that they can be able to address whatever it is that's disturbing them. And therefore, when they come to therapy, most of us therapists, our goal, number one, is usually first to alleviate emotional distress. And thereafter, after we have formed a working relationship or an alliance with the client, to be able to forge a way forward so that by the time they leave our space, they are much better equipped to handle their lives and their realities. Now, the topic of discussion today will be on part of what we do with clients, and that has to do with examining their thought patterns or their ways of thinking which they have acquired across their lifetime. And this is informed by their experiences, informed by the environments they find themselves in, and informed also by whatever content, especially in this era of technology, whatever content that they are consuming. And the topic for discussion today is what we talk about as cognitive distortions. Now, this word cognitive distortions comes from our most well-researched technique of doing therapy that's referred to as cognitive behavior therapy. And the two scholars attributed with coming up with this model of doing therapy is one, Dr. Aaron Beck, who came up with the cognitive therapy, and two, Albert Ellis, who came up with a model of rational emotive behavior therapy. So, what is the core premises before we can go into the cognitive distortions? What's the core premise of cognitive behavior therapy? Now, what both of these two great psychologists discovered is that a lot of what affects us in terms of our emotions and therefore our behaviors is the thought processes or the thought patterns that we have. And for the most part, these thought patterns are a distortion of what reality is, or in other words, are removed from what reality is. And for the most part, when we are engaging in these distortions of reality, it's usually such an unconscious thing. And therefore, the goal or the aim of a therapist is to guide you to become very conscious and become very aware of when you are engaging in any one of these distortions. Now, worth noting is that there is a lot of other models of therapy that are under the umbrella of CBT. I've just mentioned the two key people who are attributed with giving us this model of working with clients. So let me get into this cognitive distortions that all of us, I included, usually engage in, and as a result end up affecting our mood as well as our behavior. Number one, all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking. What is that? When you're engaging in all or nothing thinking, you are seeing things in terms of it's either this or that. You are either good or bad. This person hates me or loves me. Everything, must go this way, or it's completely tragic. Are you seeing what that is? So basically you're simplifying reality into a dichotomy. It's either this or that. And you can see how that is problematic. Why? Because we know that reality is a bit more complicated than that. So somebody, for example, ignores you. And if you're engaging in all or nothing thinking, then the assumption would be something to the effect, I must be boring, that's why they're ignoring me. But how have you arrived at that conclusion? Have you confirmed with the person? And could it be that the person may also be having their own things that are going on so that they're not able to engage you? So that's the first distortion, all or nothing thinking, where you just split reality into dichotomy. It's either this or that. And we can see how that is problematic. The next cognitive distortion is overgeneralization. Overgeneralization. Now think about that time when you were in school and maybe you had good grades and then there happened to be that one bad grade. And probably the thought that came to mind is that I'm a failure. Okay? So your conclusion that you're a failure is based on just one grade that was not good. But you discounted all the other good grades. What are other areas in your life do you feel, or as I am explaining what this distortion is, can you think of as you overgeneralizing? Basically just using one event to sum up your whole experience. Another common one, you find that especially in Nairobi during traffic, and it can get really crazy. So you happen to encounter a driver who is so unruly and rude. Maybe they come and just cut right through you. And of course that definitely will ruin your mood and your day. But then you happen to get to another stop and a driver just allows you to pass. But instead of also taking into account this experience where you've gotten a driver who is caring and mindful, you still remain stuck and focused at the bad experience. And now you decide every driver on the roads in Nairobi is bad. So you're using one event to sum up a whole experience. Okay. Now, the other one is what we talk about as jumping into conclusion. Jumping into conclusion. How or what is this distortion? So there is two ways that you can participate in jumping into conclusion. Number one, you can do so by what we call fortune telling. And what do we mean by fortune telling? This is whereby you assume someone's intention. You assume you know what someone's intentions are. You have not asked, you have not inquired, you have not made any effort to find out what their intentions are, but you decide you know. If I was to use the previous example, if I'm engaging in a cognitive distortion of fortune telling, then I might decide this person, for example, because I'm a woman, they're behaving that way because they've decided I'm a woman and they can disrespect me. How do you know that? Okay. Then we have mind reading. Mind reading and a jumping into conclusion. And this is where you expect people to know what you're thinking. They should have known that that is wrong. They should have known that they're upsetting to me. The question becomes, did you communicate that someone's behavior was inappropriate? Did you communicate that someone's way of being was inappropriate and unacceptable to you? And because of that lack of proper communicating, then you assume they are supposed to read your mind and know what exactly that you're feeling or your experience is. Now, the next one is magnification and minimization. And this specific cognitive distortion, I have seen it a lot, especially with people who are religious, whereby when you give them a compliment, they tend to downplay. No, it wasn't me. You know, they minimize. You did a superb job. Today, the choir, you really outdid yourself. But they minimize that. And then maybe magnification aspect to it is where then they now bring out something that didn't go correct. Did you notice that the sound was not so correct? It was not set up. Or did you notice that I missed the lyrics midway through the song? Notice, minimizing the good aspect, magnifying the negative. Something I also used to see quite common here in Kenya is when, for example, you compliment a lady on her dressing and how good she looks. She goes on a whole explanation of how her outfit, in fact, it's not what she had planned, or she even gives you extra information as it's borrowed or it's secondhand, it's not that expensive, you see. So they're minimizing the positive, which is you've given them a compliment, they've put themselves together well, but magnifying things that you didn't even ask for. For you, you are just focusing on the good aspect. So magnification and minimization. Then the other distortion is what we talk about as should statement. The question here becomes, what is should statements? And here is where you point a finger at yourself. I should have known better. I should have seen this coming. More so, especially when something doesn't work out as it should have. Yeah, here is me engaging in should statements. Yeah, but here is where you tend to have an unrealistic kind of analysis of outcomes. I should have seen it coming. But the fact that you didn't see it coming does not necessarily make you whatever negative thing that you conjure up in your brain. The fact that you didn't see it coming makes you human. And being human sometimes means we have our blind spots. But you find that when you're engaging in especially this distortion, you tend to beat yourself down. Another one is the world should be fair. Is that true? If you've lived for a couple of years like I have by now you already know it's not a fair place. And I doubt it's about to begin to be fair. So if you're engaging in should statements, again, here we are distorting reality. I should have known better. The world should be fair. I should be perfect. I should get everything right. And especially when you find people maybe are trying to start a new behavior, a new practice, for example, to stay healthy, you find that people tend to engage in these should statements a lot. I should be disciplined. I should not have a setback. But is that so? Is that really the true view of reality? Or are you being too harsh on yourself? Then we have the other distortion, which is self-blame and other blame. Self-blame. And it's something unique I have seen here, especially sometimes when I'm doing my therapy work. Sometimes when the child, here is a child who's coming from a two-home household. When the child obviously has been brought to therapy because there's a problem, if they now become the responsibility of the mother. But when things are okay, then all the praise goes to the father. And you find sometimes women take this on a lot. You know, I should have known better. I'm the mother. I should have paid a close watch and that sort of thing. And society tends to be very harsh on the mother when especially a child is perceived to be truant, or all those other colorful words people use for children who are problematic. And let me balance that out by saying also fathers as well. There has been a lot of talk of absent fathers, and again attributing certain things or certain misdemeanors or behaviors to the absence of the fathers. And so you tend to see that a lot of blame. So parents take on sometimes blame that is not theirs. For example, if a child was found not with drugs in school or was found breaking the school rules, how is that the parent's fault? It is the child who has broken the rules. And I know we could go on a winded argument about, you know, the environment they've come from, how they've been raised, and the values and all those kinds of things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this child, especially at a certain age, must begin to learn to take responsibility. And the parent, in fact, the role of a parent is to teach the child to learn to be autonomous. And what does that entail? Taking responsibility for themselves. And so, self-blame and other blame, whereby you take on blame where it's really not your responsibility, and then you avoid assigning, or rather, and sometimes again the flip side of that, you blame other people where you're the one who should take responsibility. And so, what can we learn from these cognitive distortions? One thing to remember is that all of us, because of the experiences that we have gone through, and you can check out a few videos I've put out about trauma, because one of the things that actually works towards distorting how we view reality or developing a lot of these distortions is trauma. And so none of us is immune to this. However, knowledge of this can help us to identify when we are engaging in one of these. Am I truly present and engaging with reality as is, or am I distorting it with one of these 10 distortions that I have read for you? So just take it upon yourself. Just listen to this video again and try and see, can you identify which of these distortions are you most guilty of engaging in? And it could be in one situation you're engaging in more than one distortion. So thank you so much for listening. I wish you the very best.